So, how would you describe how your first year at the university went?
Well, we had a great first year. I was on the board for 7 years
Mm-hmm.
before taking over
Mm-hmm.
St. Leo,
Mm-hmm.
and I really had to move from probably the 60,000 foot level of the board down to as close as I could get and understand St. Leo.
Right.
St. Leo is very complex.
Mm-hmm.
We have the campus, of course, with about 2,400 students.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have our online center.
Right.
We have our centers out there, 40 of them.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then we have our graduate.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very complex setup.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a look at it. I told the board I was going to kick the tires for about 6 months.
Right.
And I think that's a good leadership style.
Oh,
is get in
absolutely.
there and understand what the organization is like and how they like to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found was St. Leo is just like a small business that took off.
Mm-hmm.
And Art Kirk did a fabulous job
Right.
over 18 years.
Right.
And we had just exploded, but we had started turning down in a couple areas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the military is downsizing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of our biggest customers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our students come out of the military, so
Right.
we had to take a good look at that. Then we were also on the community colleges here in Florida, and we did the third and fourth year for students that graduated from those community colleges.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Florida all of a sudden said the community colleges could go to 4 years.
Yeah.
So they became our competitors.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So we had to work on that too. So we're taking a look at all of those things. And if you're not really watching what's going on out there, if you're not responding to it, you're not changing so that you work with what the environment out there, you're not going to grow.
Right.
So that's what we're doing right now. When I came in, I saw, for example, our centers and our online were really stovepipe. And so we broke down those stovepipes and we combined them under one person. And the centers really didn't have any marketing, very little. They didn't have the software that the online had. So what we did is we combined them. Now the centers can use the call centers that online has.
Right.
They can use the software that goes down to them.
Wow.
And we have extra marketing. So people have seen now
Right.
St. Leo signs in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, right.
and outside of some of the military posts.
Okay.
And
That's neat how you used one to help the other.
yeah, exactly. And working complementary,
Mm-hmm.
they can in fact help each other. So
Mm-hmm.
so that's one of the things we're
Mm-hmm.
doing. And I think that will probably make a big difference for us in the long run. You don't see it so much on campus
Mm-hmm.
here,
Right.
but you do see it out in the centers and online.
Right. Okay, great. What would you say was your greatest challenge that you faced during your first year last year?
Well, anytime there's a transition,
Mm-hmm.
and leaders learn this, anytime there's transition, there's
Right.
angst.
Mm-hmm.
And there's angst inside the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell there was a lot of angst among the staff and faculty, not knowing what was going to happen, who they were going to have to talk to on different areas, because we were changing the structure some.
Right.
And we had to let some people go, not because they were doing a bad job, but because their jobs really didn't add to the mission at all.
Right.
So anytime you do that, there's a lot of angst.
Right.
You know, they worry about the jobs.
Mm-hmm.
These were very good people with our value system. Stewardship said, you know, we had to make those changes.
Absolutely.
On the other hand, we had to respect, and they were part of our community, so we had to take care of them, and we tried to take care of them on the way out.
Has that angst healed?
Has the angst healed? I think a little bit.
Yeah.
What I've done in Community Day and some of the others is talk to the community that any of that is done. It's behind us.
Mm-hmm.
And now what we're doing is we're actually hiring.
Mm-hmm.
And we've hired a lot of people in the different areas where we want to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime that small business that takes off really with explosive growth,
Right.
at a certain point you've got to change and become more sophisticated.
Right.
And respond to that environment, or you don't continue to grow.
Right.
And that's very important. So that's what we were doing. I tried to explain it in that way to tamp down some of
Right.
the angst.
Right. All right. So what are some of your specific plans that you intend to tackle this coming year?
Well, we've got to finish what we started.
Okay.
And what we started was I told them July 1st, the new organization was going to be in place. And what I did is I changed what the vice presidents were responsible for, and I tried to align them with our business organization. So I have one person now in charge of marketing and enrollment. So she's responsible for not only selling St. Leo, but getting people enrolled. So there's a cause and effect there. And that seems to be working out pretty well.
Okay.
And then, as I said, we broke down the silos between the centers and the online, and one person is in charge of that. We brought in a very bright young woman who's been doing some great things with Walden University, and she's taking a new, fresh look at that organization. And we brought in some others. So while we had to let some go because their jobs no longer helped the organization, we have brought in a number of folks to help us keep that growth going.
Okay. All right, so we're going to get a little bit more specific now. So, like we talked about, an incoming freshman reached out to us, thanking us and inquiring about an article on the LGBT community here on campus at St. Leo. How would you respond to her? Because her question was is there a presence on campus? Do they gather? Is there any kind of club or something? So how would you respond to her about our LGBT community on campus?
The way I look at it, we have 6 values here. They're all derived from the Benedictine value system. And among them are 2 very important ones, and that's community and respect. And every student, every staff and faculty representative, community and respect. I think a great example was Friday when the freshmen arrived, and there were hundreds of students out there helping them get into their rooms.
Right.
I think that is a great representation of the value system here. When I talk to students, the 2 things they value most at St. Leo are the faculty and the closeness with the faculty, but also the value system here. And I think that's what I talked to her about, that we value every single student here. And with the value of community, we're here to help each other.
Right.
And I think that's critically important. And if we're not valuing the people, because this is a very diverse group, if we're not valuing it, we're not that Catholic institution that we say we are.
Right. So, if a group of students were to want to establish some sort of specific, recognized, organized club for the LGBT community on campus, would that be something that would be approved, officially?
We'd take a look at it, as we do with all the clubs that come in. There's a lot of the clubs that come in every single year, and certainly take a look at it and make sure that it was within the guidelines of the university as a whole.
Okay.
And that's what we do with each and every club that puts in a request. We take a look at the charter and make sure it's in consonance with the mission of St. Leo.
Okay. All right. So throughout the summer, it has been rumored that students will no longer be able to work on campus in non-work study positions, and it's only going to be work study positions available. And we've heard that some departments have what's called the preferential work study and all of that. And so that's, as you know, work study students will be hired, first and primarily, and then kind of the leftover positions, if there are any, will be handed out to non-work study students. Is there any truth to any of this, and can you clarify stuff about this? No? Okay.
No, let me talk to that.
Okay.
There was a memo that went out earlier that was mistaken.
Right.
We pulled it back in, but of course, once you put something out, there's
there.
a lot of rumors
Right.
that float around. There are 2 programs. There's the federal work study, and then there's the institutional work study. The federal government puts in about $800,000 a year for St. Leo, and the institution puts in about $800,000. And we've not cut back in that. What we've done is
You've not cut back in the institutional?
Right.
Okay.
What we're trying to do is do both simultaneously. And what happens is, and what I told the vice presidents is, be very careful with that. Use the federal work study as much as you can, because I don't want to spend the institutional if we don't have to. But as soon as the federal work study runs out, I think some of the departments didn't understand that it was St. Leo money that goes into that. So now they're more conscious of it and they're aware of it. One of the things we did do is try to align across the university the rules on work study and the pay. And the only if you could say preferential, is that there are certain jobs that takes skill, and those like the tutors, and they'll probably make a little bit more than some of the other jobs. But there will be work study. There'll be both federal and the institutional work study.
Okay, great. It's good to get that cleared up because I know, like, definitely when our department heard about that, we were a little freaked out at first.
that was a question in the Senate too.
Okay.
And I think what you're getting is, I am trying to devolve onto the VPs, the vice presidents, responsibility for their budgets. And I think there's some angst there as they take on responsibilities that sometimes they didn't have before. And they're being very careful with the money. And that's good stewardship. And but we are going to have work study.
Okay, so based on the prevalence of recent gun violence, not only all of last year, but definitely throughout the summer, as I'm sure you know, does the university have any specific new plans to ensure the safety of its students, both on campus and at the centers?
This is something that the board, security is something that the board paid a lot of attention to over the last couple of years. And we responded to the board, particularly last year. We took a good look at this. And consequently, we did a study of the centers. We took a look at them and what security needs that they needed. And you got to remember that the centers frequently have night classes. They might get out at 10 p.m. And they want to make sure that the people coming in are the students. And when you go out to your car at night, out in the parking lot, you know, some people are a little bit nervous. So we're working on that. We dedicated about $150,000 to getting security up out there. And that means card entries, and we're also taking a look at lighting in the parking lots. And there, we don't own those areas, so we have to go to the owners of the areas to take care of that. We also hired a campus, a university safety and security officer, Cyrus Brown. That was one of the hires that we did. He is a Florida State patrolman. He was a chief. He had from Orlando all the way to Pensacola. So he has a lot of background. He knows a lot of the people. He also has done a lot of the emergency action plans. So we have him now over the campus and the centers, and so he has responsibility for both. That doesn't take away from the campus itself. So what else have we done? Over the summer, the local sheriff had some training here on campus. We want to get them to know the campus so that if something does happen, they know where the buildings are and they're familiar with it. We've taken a look at a couple other things. We have mandatory training once a year, and the staff and faculty have to take a security class. We've brought in some outside speakers on the subject, and we've also taken a look at what the local police can do. You know, with one of these incidents, you know, you're going to ask, you know, can you stop them? And I might have at West Point when I was up there, because I could check every car coming through the gate. We can't do that here, as most colleges and universities can. So what you're presented with really is a case where you've got to react to something that happens, and how quickly do you react to it? That's critical. So we've checked with the local police. They're within this area between St. Leo and San Antonio about 2/3 of the day. So they can respond very quickly. And we're also taking a look at maybe arming one or two of our security officers. They wouldn't be the ones that go into the residence halls or do any of that, the interaction with the students, but they might be available very quickly. We're still looking at that.
So would you say if an attack were to happen on one of our campuses, God forbid, that we would be prepared?
Well, as prepared as we could be.
Right.
And again, a lot of it is just reaction,
And
and
you would
how
say
quickly
that,
can you react to the
so the
react
reaction
to the
time
incident?
would
Yeah.
be good.
So that's what we're concentrating
Okay.
on right
All right.
now.
Okay. So
Reaction and the actions inside the area. What does the faculty member do with his or her class?
right.
And we've also, that's part of the training that we've done.
Okay. You said they do that once a year, the safety
They
training?
do the mandatory training once a year. We've had discussions, public speaking, and some training that's going on so that people are aware of what they have to do.
So student debt is obviously a concern for many students, and even presidential candidates such as Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders have, called for free undergraduate education. How do you feel about that?
That's a great question. I think the older you get, the more you learn that there's nothing free in this world.
Right.
And I'm a little bit concerned on a couple areas. But first, you may have a free education now, but somebody's going to pay for it, and it's probably going to be you as you get older
Right.
and have to pay down that debt. I worry about that. The other thing I worry about is we've got a great university and college system in the United States. We have to be very careful with that because it's a fragile institution. And when the government gets involved in it, where does it stop? And if it's the free education in the state universities and the community colleges, what does that do to St. Leo? Because we're left out at that point.
Right.
And I think if you're not careful, you may grow the state colleges and universities, but lose all of those private colleges that contribute so much all the time.
Like us.
And frequently, those are the ones that educate the probably the most needy. So I worry about that. And then if government gets into there, can they make regulations on what you teach, how you teach it?
Right.
So there's a lot of big questions that have to be considered as you go into a proposal like that.
Right.
Well, the only thing I think the beauty of St. Leo is the strong mission, the value set that we have, the great staff and faculty that take care of our students, and the whole teaching focus that we have. It makes such a difference, and I think that that's really the selling point for St. Leo. Those items, and then the value system, I'd stress that's so important in developing mind, body, and spirit.